Hello and welcome to episode 4 of the VO webinar week. My name's Rich, and today I'm joined by a guest speaker, Ben Edwards, all the way from the US. Ben, maybe you want to say a quick hello and a quick introduction.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Thanks for including me in the webinar week. I've watched a lot of the ones in the past and I've learned a lot, so I'm happy to be part of it this week.
Awesome. Well, look, today we're going to talk a little bit about what it means to be a grassroots user. Often that can be a parent user of VO. And we're going to ask Ben a few questions and talk about a lot of his experiences. So Ben, just give us a bit of an introduction about how you found VO and when you first started using the product.
Definitely. So it actually goes back a little bit. When I was at the coaches convention in Chicago, I met Henrik when he had a booth there, and actually I got one of the early ones. Oh, it blurted out. Got one of the early ones, and I met him because when we were in the search for a video solution, actually, I used to use like a DSLR and do it by hand and SD cards, and someone actually had stolen it out of my car. So I was on the search for a video solution, and I ran into him. So I got that one, and then I ended up getting another one, and then over the years we've kept adding to the cameras, and so. We have 3 kids that play soccer, and so we have a lot of games to record, and so we're pretty good at recording a lot of footage. And I made some mistakes early on, like getting to know the software and the technology, and but pretty quick we figured out that it was a pretty helpful for like the kids and for the coaches and for everybody. So we were pretty excited to be out there. We so a lot of the time when we first started, there was no one on the sideline. We were the only ones. So everyone would come up to us and ask, like, what is this thing you have on the sideline? And so we had to answer a lot of questions. So I had to learn about it quickly because I had to answer a lot of questions about it quickly.
So you were very much one of the first users of VO on the sidelines, were you?
Well, in the United States, I think at the time it was already in other markets, but like I think when we ordered, like you got like an order number or something, and like we were one of the early ones because I think you could pre-order that convention in Chicago, and so yeah, I mean there wasn't a lot of them on the sideline, and so a lot of people were interested to see kind of how does it work, what does it do, what's it like, why isn't it moving, lots of questions.
Yeah, and I guess just to dive into some of those questions, Ben, what were some of your earliest fears, about filming and perhaps taking on something that's a bit alien? It's an automated system. It sounds really technical with the AI. Yeah, what were some of those earliest fears that you sort of came across and thought about?
Sure, yeah. I mean, I have a technology background, and so I'm used to things like kind of testing things out and getting in there and messing with them. And so I kind of figured that things wouldn't go well right off the bat. So I was pretty comfortable just like testing it and giving a lot of feedback. So I actually sent many, many emails over the first year or two in terms of how come it doesn't do this or how do I get to this. Um, the main thing that I was worried about is, just getting the footage that we could use because prior to that, I was one of the people out there, like prior to the DSLR, I'd use my like iPhone. And of course, whenever there was an exciting play, I would be watching and then I would like kind of record the sky or like the ground and all the goals. You could hear people cheering, but you would not see the goal. So I had learned the hard way and I was tired of like, SD cards and Google Drive and like I had done all those things. And so I was just really excited to have an alternative because I was doing it, like as in my spare time and I was doing it for the team. And so people would say, where's the video and can I get it? And it was taking up a lot of time. So I was excited to find something that would save me time. And I was, obviously I was worried about like, is it going to follow the ball? And to be honest, in the beginning, there was times when it wouldn't. And I'd send an email and say it didn't follow it. And then they'd say, okay, try it again. And they fixed it. And so a lot of the concerns were, you know, is it going to actually track the ball? And then there's a lot of questions. There's usually a lot of like what if questions in terms of like what if this happens or what if that happens. And that's honestly what I get a lot of nowadays when I talk to a lot of teams around the country. There's a lot of apprehension about like the technology and how it works or how it might not work.
And I completely understand, of course, brand new technology, it always takes a bit of getting used to, to try something new. So if we fast forward to obviously now, because I can see you had some of our very earliest models of camera,
Hmm.
I think it's 2 or 3 models, previous models that you've had. If we fast track to now, fast forward, um, what is your current experience of using VO? The newest camera, the newest version of the software that's had lots of updates since you've been with us. How do things look now? How does everything work for you?
Sure, sure. I mean, we use it a lot of different ways. You can use it as like the kids, like they want to see their goals. The coaches want to use it for coaching sessions. Now our oldest is in high school, and so we're looking for footage for, like recruiting tapes. And so we use it a variety of different ways. I guess I left one out. We travel a lot for sports, and so there's always a lot of families that, someone in the family, especially multi-kid families where like one kid is in Kansas City playing sports, another kid's in, like Orlando. So we also do the live streaming. And so we've used like how we use it is different based on like, which one of those areas we're using it for. Um, and that's kind of what I get a lot of questions from people like in terms of how does a live stream work and what if this happens or how does the highlights work or how do you do a coaching session. And so there's kind of kind of hurdles to get over depending on how are you going to use it, but it's one of those things where like the first time you do it you're not really sure what you're doing. And I kind of you like equate it to um it's kind of like when you're a player and you're picking a new team. Like there's a lot of nervousness and like, which team should I pick? And you do your research and you find a new team. But then like once you found one that you think is going to fit, then you kind of have to trust the coach and the program and you trust the process. So it's kind of the same with kind of the technology. It's been my experience is that, like once you start using it, you kind of have to just trust that the technology is going to work itself out. Like this thing doesn't work, say, hey, this isn't doing what I think it's supposed to do. And then let VO work on it and come up with the solution. And so I think that we've actually been really happy with all the different aspects, and it's been a progression to where like you know first it was just recording, and like for example, just I think a few weeks ago or a while back they released instant playback, and so there's new features that roll out over time, and we've been really happy with it for all of our kids and all different programs.
I think, Ben, from just going on what you've said, that you would be a typical user, a typical US customer. We have lots of parents that use the system for many of the reasons that you mentioned, whether it be getting footage for scholarship, travel team. If you could just elaborate maybe just a little bit there, what has it meant for you to be able to get sort of scholarship footage or film a travel team? What has VIA enabled you to do? I know you mentioned time being a big thing, saving
Mhm.
time. What are some of the other things that it sort of enabled or led you to do?
Sure. I mean, I think the way I look at it is overall experience. So like as like a coach or a parent, like when you're at the game, you don't want to have to worry about the technology. And so it's really nice to be able to start it and then kind of set it and forget it. And then you're able to be in the moment, right? So like if you're coaching, it's picking up what the players and what you're saying, or if you're on the sideline as a parent, you're not having to worry about oh, like should I press record? Should I not? Am I going to get the play? Am I not? So you can basically experience the game as it's happening, and then or like additionally, if you're like live streaming, I guess if you're live streaming and if you're the person in charge of it, you do have to like remember to you know uh, start the timer and a few things like that. Um, but so the overall experience is that it lets you kind of be present during the game, and then the experience after the game is that like for example, like when we went to a showcase and we were able to basically go back to the hotel and pull it up on the screen and then go through the coach went through the game and
Yeah.
because we had a game that night. And so the experience during the game is nice because you're not having to worry about whether you're capturing it. And
Yeah.
then the experience after the game is important. It's nice to be able to, like get it back right away. It's also nice to be able to, like, for example, high school games that we do now, like, they're pretty exciting. Like the club games, there's not as much excitement because there's less fans, but high school games, you have a lot of excitement and the game, there's a lot of hard fought battles. And then at the end of the night, you go home, you plug it in, and you wake up the next morning, and it's there, and all the clips are there. You can share it with the coaches, and the players can pull up their highlights, and they can, text their buddies and be like, "Hey, I scored this goal," or um,
Yeah.
or they could say, "I can't believe that this wasn't called a penalty kick."
Yeah.
So the experience is such that um, it does enhance the experience in terms of like being able to use the footage to enjoy it. And then I guess to your point about the like from a coaching perspective, it's very very helpful to be able to, you know, when you're doing a film review to pull a very specific example and say this is exactly the point at which I wanted you to do something different. Or if you use a guided coaching approach, you would say show them the video and say, well, no, what could you have done differently here?
Yeah.
And then in terms of like footage for recruiting, it is, like we're working with an expert at that right now because I'm not an expert at that. And so it's been really nice to be able to just actually have my son go through, pull all his clips, and he sent them to the guy, and the guy helped us make a video. So it kind of enables that whole experience of just making as like a busy, like if you're a coach or a parent and you have a lot of things going on, it makes all those things easier and faster, basically.
Absolutely. Well, let me throw this one at you, Ben. How many recordings do you think you've done over the last, what would it be, 3 years plus, 4 years?
That's a good question. Like if yeah, when you go to the web page and list all the videos, like
Yeah.
there's like a next, and I think our is like page one, page two, page. I think ours is like on page 240 or whatever. I don't know.
Okay. So a lot of
I haven't
recordings.
counted.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Awesome.
yeah.
And you talked a little bit there about sort of, the evolution of the product. Obviously, you started just recording because that's what VO did at the beginning, just enabled you to record and obviously have your games to look at. I just was curious, how much of the sort of modern features are you using? We've got analytics there for, statistics, a lot of advanced game feedback. We've got the VO Live. Are you utilizing both of those? I know you touched on it a little bit.
Sure. And I think it really depends. So like there are some parents or coaches who literally like, I just want the footage. I just want the footage. And then there's some coaches who really want the analytics. And then there's some people who really want the live streaming. And we use all of them because we do have three kids and they're different stages, like, different stages. There's like the youth soccer, there's the club soccer, there's the high school soccer. And so, some we use it for film review, we use it for live streaming when we're traveling to showcases. We use it for like clips just for, sending the grandparents. So we use a lot, like all the different features basically. But when I talk to a lot of parents, they're just like, all that is too much. I just want to be able to show up and hit start and have it work. And I mean, to be honest, you know, some of that like gives the people anxiety, like that they don't want like, they're not interested in the advanced functionality of it, which is fine. I tell them, look, you don't have to worry about that. And the way it's set up is, the way the VO sets it up is you can just record or you can do analytics, you can do the streaming. So I say just do the basic, and then it's pretty simple. Like you set it up, start it, and we kind of like help people walk through it. There's a lot of like um anxiety in terms of like the first time you use it, right? But then once you've done it once or twice, it's a lot easier to do, basically.
So is that first experience, the first time you set it up, get it going, I guess you could say that anxiety you mentioned there of doing it the first time, does that quickly evaporate and sort of go as you use it a second time, a third time, and in your case, probably the thousandth time? I guess you just set it up now and away you go, and it's dead easy, right?
Sure. I mean, one of the things that's happening, one of the emotional kind of things is that you might be a little nervous about how it's going to work, but you also really want the footage because the game is about to start. So there's like this kind of like this, people they get really nervous right before the game because they really want to work, but they also, they're not sure it's going to work. So there's a lot of like apprehension. But like you said, once you've done it a few times, actually at that point, then what happens is then you kind of become the video person for your team or your school. And then what you can do is what I advise people to do is to can then help other people, like if you're a coach, help the parents learn, because what you really want is you want like multiple people who are comfortable with it. So as a coach, you don't have to start it, right? The assistant coach can start it, or a parent can start it. Or if you're a parent and you're not going to be there, you can say, "Hey, can you run it for me?" So yeah, it's once you get over it, then the next step is basically like helping other people in the club and what or the school. And one of the things that I've kind of noticed is that you kind of become an advocate for like the process in terms of like not just capturing the video, but now that you have it, how are you going to use it? Like, how can you use it for footage? How can you use it for highlights? And so once you use it and you become comfortable with it, then you almost become like an advocate for it, and um, you help other people figure out how to use the video.
Interesting. So you've probably got to a point where you're happy just to let the camera perhaps go with someone else for a weekend, for a game.
Mhm.
You're happy that they'll be able to just set it up, get recording with it. You're even at a stage where you don't take it yourself and do it yourself every time. It sounds like.
I mean, it's so for the coaches, or like if you coach multiple teams, well, the coach is going to be there for each team, but like especially if you have three kids that play soccer on a given day, you might be on three different fields at the same time. And so what we'll do is I'll send one camera with this team, one camera with this team, and so I'm there to run the live stream for like the ECNL team, but then for the league team, someone else can start it for my daughter, or my son. He's in high school, so like there's times where he goes and he goes and he sets it up on the sideline, he starts recording, and then he goes and warms up. So yeah, I mean I mean, and we send them to people. Like people are like, hey, I need a camera in the ECNL National, so we'll like ship it to the hotel, and they'll it's so in terms of the process, it's not that complicated. There's a video on how to do it. You watch it, you start it, you stop it. But yeah, once you used it, it's pretty simple to like teach other people how to do it.
Yeah, awesome. Um, so I guess just around sort of purchase, you've obviously purchased a few of the cameras. If you don't mind me asking, actually, how do you fund the cameras? Is it something that you ask the parents to chip in with? Do
Sure,
you
sure.
self fund? Is it something you've sort of budgeted towards, perhaps, when it comes to college and recruitment, that side of things?
Sure. Yeah, sure. But actually, it's kind of a funny story. The very first one that I bought, we were at the conference and I met Henrik, and I told my wife, she was with me, and I was like, I think we should get a camera. And she's like, well, where does it come from? I was like, it's from Denmark. She's like, how much does it cost? And have you ever used it before? And she was very skeptical. And she's like, I don't think it's a good idea. But then the whole weekend, I kept like suggesting it and like coming up with like, well, what if we do this? What if we do that? And so finally, by the plane ride home, had convinced her to self-fund. And I could tell by her reaction that she was mentally like kind of flushing the money down the toilet. But one of the things that I got her to agree to is I said, how about this? I'll pay for it. My first suggestion was I want it for my birthday, and she's like, "Well, that's an expensive birthday present." But I was like, I'm gonna get it, and then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use it for other teams in our club and whatever, and that will help pay for it. And so that was kind of our compromise. But that's a really good question, because when people call me to ask about the camera, what I ask them is, how are you going to use it? Because it really depends on if it's like for a player, or if it's for a team or a school or a club. Because if it is for like a team or a club, it's a lot easier to kind of share the cost. But again, going back to kind of the advocate, usually what happens is one person is kind of the advocate and says, like, we need this for our team. Or sometimes what happens is like if you're in a system where there's like multiple teams, maybe like the team of the number one team will have a camera, but then like the second team, the third team, the fourth team won't have one. So they'll say like, we need a camera for these teams. And so and usually that person is kind of the one that goes out and kind of talks to all the coaches and the parents and the club directors, and says like, let's do this. And my experience has been that there's like a percentage, like there's a certain percentage of players and families that aren't interested, and then there's another percentage of families that are super interested.
Yeah.
And so typically what you can kind of assume, if you're funding wise, is that like a certain percentage of the people are going to use it a lot, but not everyone is necessarily going to pay for it, and not everyone And some people are gonna use it without paying for it, but the combined benefit of it to the team is there, such that it is a negotiation, because it also depends on like if you're a high school team, you don't need it all year long. So you also have to talk about how many months of the year do you play, or like how many sports do you play? So there's a lot of questions about how you're actually going to use it in terms of when you're like going to fund it. But it does work well when you have like a team or a club who um can help fund it, and especially then, because not only are you sharing the cost, but you're also sharing the benefit. And then you can kind of, like I said, you can teach like multiple people how to use it, um, and that footage kind of is shared across the team.
Yeah. And is that something you try to actively do there, Ben? Do you give, if there are interested players, perhaps parents, do you give them login access to the platform? Do you get them all involved? Is that something you actively try to promote and encourage?
Oh, definitely. So, I mean, a lot of the times people will come up to us and say, how does this work? What's the deal? Like, and so basically, yeah. So like, we just have like a demo team, and I'll get their information. Um, or if it's a team we're playing against, then I'll just get their information and I'll share the footage with them. Like this one game, the dad was down there with his camera, like his iPhone, like videoing the penalty kick. And I went over to him after the play, and I told him, I was like, he was from another team, and I said, "Hey, I have, I'm recording this. I'll share it with you, so you can watch. You don't have to worry about, trying to record on your phone." Um, and so, I mean, definitely, I think that usually there's a person or two or a group of people in a school or club that are kind of comfortable with the technology and are kind of the go-to people. And so whenever somebody, they'll say, well, what's the deal with that? And then they'll point him down the sideline. Oh, go talk to that guy. And then I'll explain it to him. I'll share the video with them. Or people, they call me. We have a demo team where we'll add them, and then they can see like how it works, and we can answer questions. I mean, the questions that people have are usually the same set of questions, right? Like, they have questions like, what do you do your first game? How about your first tournament? How about your first travel? All these, like, they're like pretty standard questions that
Yeah.
most people have. And so, it's a matter of like, just, checking all those boxes to make sure that it fits their needs. And if it does, then it's a pretty good addition to their team.
Awesome. And look, just one last question from me on that note, actually. How has your response changed, I guess, to those questions? Obviously, you used it 4 years ago, 2019. What do you say to those people now when they ask you, how easy is it to use? Are you able to set it up quickly on a game day? What about a tournament? What are your sort of typical responses? And I guess, have they changed a lot since the early days?
Sure, sure. I mean, I think when people ask me questions, what I usually like the thing that I usually tell them is that it's technology, and so there's times when it's not going to go right. And like, if you go back in time, like you said, 4 years ago, when we were all standing there with our phones like on the sideline,
Yeah.
if you look at where the technology in the industry has gone to, it's pretty impressive, right?
Yeah.
And so I think as consumers, we quickly forget what it was like before we had these things, right?
Yeah,
And we
exactly.
kind of assume that they're going to work, and it's frustrating. And so it is pretty impressive, like what we can do versus what we used to be able to do. What I tell people is that, like, um the VO, I feel like, has done a good job of like um getting it right. So like, even if it doesn't work or something breaks or you miss a game or whatever, they will fix it and they'll get it right. So there's going to be times where like you go to record and something doesn't work. Um, but on the flip side of that, I think there's a lot of innovation, like not just like in the company. And so I feel like when you innovate, like, from a technology background, things eventually will break. Unfortunately, regardless, especially when you're serving, the market around the world. And so, as part of that innovation and new features means that sometimes things aren't going to work. Obviously, as a person who, like, if I'm out there recording like a high school game, and like your kid scores a winning goal, you need it to work that game. And so, it is really frustrating. And that is the other flip side, is that, like, when it doesn't work, you hear the most from the people when it doesn't work. Like there's
Yeah.
maybe a large percentage of people where it's pretty good, but when it doesn't work, those are the folks that are the most
Yeah.
set and vocal. And I mean, that's just in any, I think, in any
Yeah.
industry. Um, but anyway, so to answer your question, how has my response changed over time? I think that um, the technology has definitely kind of gotten better, improved over time, and I feel like um, as I mentioned earlier, there's different ways that you might use it, and so I think that the VO kind of first started, with one set of users, but now they're like adding multiple different like use cases for all these different, coaches and parents and schools and teams, and so I feel like it's kind of grown along with the sport.
Awesome. Well, Ben, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. We're going to finish up there. Thank you for giving us so much insight into how it is to be a user of VO, a parent at the same time. It sounds like you got your hands full actually running 3 kids
Yeah.
in different places. Thank you for sharing all those experiences. It was really insightful. And as I said, really great to talk to you. And thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in and listening to the episode.